Good day, grade 12 learners. Welcome to today's English file lesson. My name is Karabo Side. This lesson is brought to you by the Gauteng Department of Education in collaboration with Saibono Discovery Center. Our topic for today is literature revision. Grade 12 learners, are you familiar with the exam papers format and what is expected of you when answering the literature paper? Most importantly, are you in the know on how to study for the literature paper? Firstly, when you get into the exam room, you will be given a book of 26 pages or more. The book will have a cover page. On the outside, it will be written Basic Education Department, Republic of South Africa, National Certificate, Grade 12, English First Additional Language Paper 2, November 2022. What is at stake with your Grade 12 Paper 2 paper? You will be writing for 70 marks. And the duration of the paper is 2.5 hours. Like I've mentioned earlier, the question paper will consist of 26 pages or more. When you open your question paper or your question paper, the book, on page 2, you will find instructions. And key amongst these instructions is that you need to answer only on 2 questions. And there's also an indication that you have to follow the instructions at the beginning of each section carefully. You must also number the answers correctly according to the numbering used in the question paper. Then you must start each section on a new page. The suggested time will be about 75 minutes for each section, and kindly write neatly and legibly. When you go to page 3, there is a table of contents. Table of contents will list all the genres that we study in grade 12. Over and above that, there is a section on page 4 that indicates or that helps you to remember which questions you are writing or you are answering on. Let's look at the instructions. The first one is, do not attempt to read the entire question paper. The question paper consists of how many sections? 4 sections. And you are required to answer questions from 2 sections that you have studied, not what you see in the book only, but what you have studied. What it means is there are other sections or books that you did not study or that your teacher did not do with you at school. So all those you forget all about and you only concentrate on the books that you were taught this year. Again, time management, importantly, for each section, you spent 75 minutes. I'm going to recap. The question paper consists of 4 sections. How many questions are we supposed to write? 2 questions in all. 1 question from any 2 sections. The reason why I am emphasizing this is that during your prelim exams, you were given a book of about 26 pages and you had to write on 2 questions, but most of you wrote more than 2. And if you do that, as educators, we are supposed to mark only the 2. So be careful, read your instructions well. Follow the instructions. In section A is about the 2 novels. You have a choice to respond or to answer on 1 novel, either Cry the Beloved Country or A Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. But if you have not studied the novels at school, please skip this section, skip the question, skip the section A and move on. The next section in the question paper is drama. We have 2 dramas in this section. You have a choice to answer the question on 1 drama, that is either Macbeth or My Children, My Africa. But again, if you have not studied any of the drama at school, please skip the questions. 2 dramas, you choose 1. Either Macbeth or My Children, My Africa. Section C is about the short stories for 35 marks again. Here, it's a bit different from the novels and the dramas. The questions are set on 2 short stories. There is no choice here. And you must answer on both short stories. Remember, if you are doing short stories at school, you have been taught 8 short stories, but at the end of the year, you are only answering on the 2. We have a set of questions from 1 short story and the next set of questions from the second story or story 2. But if you have not studied short stories at school, please skip this question. Lastly, we have section D, poetry. Again, for 35 marks. Here, we don't have a choice. It's like the short stories. Questions are sent on the two poems, and you must answer on both. The questions will be derived from poem 1 and also poem 2. So it will be about 17 marks plus 18 marks, or 18 plus 17, and that will give you 35 marks. But if you have not studied poems at school, please skip the question. So that's all about the format of the question paper. And remember, you follow the instructions because you do not want to lose marks. We have what we call quick wins. These are sure marks that we can put in our bag. And these questions are made up of level 1 type of questions. You are identifying the setting, the narrator, characters, conflict, poet, plot, and they make up how many marks? 14 marks. And we call those questions knowledge questions. Let's look at the easy marks, or the sure marks that we can get from English File Paper 2. And I believe you are going to study for those. For genre number 1, remember each genre is 35 marks. Genre, what do I mean? The set work. The first set is either your novel, your drama, short story, or poetry. Genre number 1, we have questions on the plot, and those questions are for 4 marks. If you ace them, you get 4 marks. You will also get a question on setting, and that question is 2 marks. You will have 2 questions that are to do with the figures of speech. Identify the figure of speech and the explanation thereof. To identify the figure of speech, you will get 1 mark. And for the explanation, you will get the 2 marks. So you have 3 marks in the bag. The last easy question will be your tone question. You should be able, or you must know how to identify the tone used in a particular line. And for that is 1 mark. So you will have, let's count, 4 plus 2 plus 3 plus 1 gives us how much? 10 marks. Then you will do other questions to add on the 10 marks that you already have in the bag. You finish your genre number 1. Then you continue with genre number 2. With genre number 2 again, you will get your plot question. It can be a different question, and you will also get your setting question. Identify the figure of speech question. Also identify the tone question, and that also is going to give you 10 marks. So those are your quick wins. You can easily get those marks. Plot. We start with a plot. We will get how many marks? 4 marks. What is a plot? A plot is a story, a narrative of events arranged in sequence. You wake up in the morning, You brush, you make a prayer, you brush your teeth, that sequence, following each other in that way. Now, what are we focused on the issue of plot? We're asking ourselves a question: why events happen and the connections between the events that happened. So we have the following important steps when we deal with a story or a drama or a short story. It will be your exposition, your rising action, climax, falling action, and denouement. Our denouement is our conclusion. Exposition is where the story starts. Let's look at the plot. I'm sure you are familiar with the covers that we have put on the screen. The covers of the set works that we do in 2022. There we are. We have Cry the Beloved Country. It tells a story of a father. What is the plot? It tells the story of a father's journey from rural South Africa to and through the city of Johannesburg in search of his son. And we have My Children, My Africa. What is it all about? It's about a black teacher who invested all his dreams for a better society in one of his pupils. And you know that pupil, isn't it? Yes, that very one, Tammy. Okay. And then that green book there, it's Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. And what is it all about? It's a narrative about the complexities of science and the duplicity of human nature. Interesting book. We have our short stories. Our short stories they are about a collection of sad, sometimes very amusing, or sometimes triumphant themes or a storyline, and they speak with a human voice. Then we have Voice of the Land, our anthology of poems with various times, places that were found from established poets. Lastly, that brown book, we have Macbeth. And then our Macbeth character, the main character, does what? Kills the king, becomes the new king, and kills more people out of paranoia. Okay. Let's look how we are going to get our 4 easy marks. I'm going to give you 2 minutes, 3 minutes to look at the chart. Characters are listed in column A, and character analysis is listed in column B. What I need you to do is you match the columns. So I'm going to pause and let's see if you can work out the answers. We have Chester there, Vera, Mr. Hager, Mr. Leonard, Yusuf Bamji, Eva, and Mrs. Bennell. And then we have the explanations there. A blind and optimistic girl, a conservative father that has hints of racial prejudice, a snobbish lady that looks down upon people of a lower class. A boy that is sensitive about his complexion. An admired and talented praise poet. A firm and impatient man. And an untrustworthy liar and a cheat. So now I'm going to pause, wait for you. I'm going to give you 2 minutes. You work out the answers. Thank you, grade 12 learners. I hope you have enjoyed responding to the questions and you have got yourself 7 out of 7. Let's see how you performed. Chester. Who is Chester? He is a boy that is sensitive about his complexion. You got it right? Yes. Pira. Who is he? An admired and talented praise poet. Give yourself a hand there. Mr. Hager. Who is he? An untrustworthy liar and a cheat. Mr. Leonard. He's a firm and impatient man. Give yourself a tick. Yusuf Bamji. Who is he? A conservative father that has a hint of racial prejudice. And who is our lovely Eva? She is a blind and optimistic girl. Mrs. Bernal. She is a snobbish lady that looks down upon people of a lower class. Yes, you've got 7 out of 7 for that. And that's great going. So you know the different characters in your 8 short stories. Let's do the last part together. We have Hedy Maguire, Zanep Bamji, Kezia Bernal, Levina, Geli Molly Maguire, and Beryl. Is Hedy Maguire a selfish, manipulative woman? No, I did not think so. Zanep Bamji is a rebel girl that wears lipstick, unlike other girls in her culture. Kaiser Banel, a selfless and hardworking woman. Lebena, a loving husband that has just been promoted. Geli, an advanced man that believes women need to improve their minds. No. Molly Maguire, a bossy and cruel lady. Aunt Beryl, a small loving girl that has no prejudice. I hope you have finished. As I was reading, you got the time to pair the correct answer. Let's look at the responses, at the answers. Paddy Maguire is a loving husband that has just been promoted. And Zanip Bamji is a selfless, hardworking woman. Keze Banel, a small, loving girl that has no prejudice. You remember her, isn't it, from the doll's house? Lebena, an advanced man that believes women need to improve their minds. From which story? From the village people. Geli, a rebel that wears a lipstick, unlike other girls in her culture. From which story? Yes, that very one. A cheap or class ruby. Then we have Molly Maguire, a selfish, manipulative woman. Which story is she from? From the Fair Coat. Correct. From the Fair Coat. And then we have Aunt Beryl. Who is she? A bossy and cruel lady. Again, from which story? From the doll's house. So you need to know all your minor characters and your major characters for you to be able to respond to the matching column question with 4 marks. The second set of our quick win question is the setting. And what is setting? We know that setting is a place where the story takes place. A place where the story takes place. It has to do also with what? With the time when the story takes place. We have place and time. How is the setting revealed? It's revealed by what? By the dialogue between characters. It's revealed by what? Descriptive passages. It's revealed by what? By action through action. And it is also revealed by how the characters speak or act, and then you can determine your setting. Let's look at the setting in Cry the Beloved Country. Before I continue, let me draw your attention to the following. The question on setting is worth 2 marks. But what I have noted in your prelim exams is that most of you just got 1 mark because you could only answer about the time, or rather about the place and not the time. And I want you to listen carefully. For you to earn the 2 marks, you need to know about the place as well as the time. Place where the story takes place. That you can easily get. All of you, I know you can get that 1 mark. But you have difficulty in getting the time right when the story takes place. That is, what was happening? The question that you need to ask yourself is, yes, it happened at this particular place, And what was taking place then? And that will be your when, your place, and your time. Sorry about that. Let's read an extract from Cry the Beloved Country. The train whistled and jerked. Khumalo was nearly thrown off his feet. It would be safer, more dignified to take his seat. And somebody who was accompanying him says, "Stay well, my friend. Go well, Mfundisi." He went to his seat and people looked at him with interest and respect, at the man who went so often to Johannesburg. And where did we get this? From book 1, chapter 3 of Cry the Beloved Country. The train whistled and jerked. And as it was bouncing from left to right, he almost fell. And he decided, let me go sit down before I embarrass myself. Because he was the man of the collar. Everybody could identify him as a priest. They looked at him with awe, interest, and respect. And they thought, when they looked at him, they thought, this man has been to Johannesburg for a number of times. Let's look at the question. The question says, describe the setting of this extract, and for how many marks? For 2 marks. Where is the story taking place? What is happening there? It is set where? In a train. For that, you get your 1 mark. And time? When? It is when Stephen Khumalo, or the priest, was on his way to Johannesburg. He is in the train that is moving to Johannesburg. So that's your 2nd mark. Grade 12 learners, let's read the next extract. Again, we're going to look at 13. Let's read. Still kneeling, the father took his son's hands, and they were not lifeless anymore, but clung to his seeking some comfort, some assurance. And the old man held them more strongly and said again, "Be of courage, my son." The white mother, hearing these cries, came in and said, but not with unkindness, "Old man, you must go now." So the son and the father were crying. The father was holding his son's hands. And they were not lifeless anymore. There was some life, because having that touch of a father brings life. And he clung to him, seeking comfort and assurance that things will be fine. And the father indeed encouraged his son and said, "Be of courage, my son." When the white mother heard the sniffing and the cries, came and said, "The old man must go now." But he was not unkind. He was feeling for them. If I were to ask you a tone question, I would ask you, what tone would the mother use telling Stephen Khumalo to leave? "Old man, you must go now." He was very sympathetic about that. Describe the setting of this extract. For 2 marks, the setting is in prison. Then you get yourself 1 mark. What was happening? Or what was the time? When? When Stephen visits Absalom, that is still the place. Before Stephen returns to Ndochen, he's there to bid him farewell. That, look, my son, be of good courage. I'm leaving, I'm going home. So that's your 2 marks. I hope when you write your exam and you find the setting question, you are all going to ace it. Remember, it is the place and the time. This question is not limited to Cry the Beloved Country, but it is a question that you will find in all the genres, in your novels, in your drama, in your short stories, sometimes even in some poems, relevant poems. Let's see, or let's read an extract from A Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Presently, her eye wandered to the other, and she was surprised to recognize in him a certain Mr. Hyde who had once visited her master and for whom she had conceived a dislike. He had in his hand a heavy cane with which he was trifling, but he answered never a word and seemed to listen with an ill-contained impatience. And then all of a sudden, he broke out in a great flame of anger, stamping with his foot, brandishing the cane and carrying on, as the maid described, like a madman. The old gentleman took a step back with the air of one very much surprised and a trifle hurt. And at that, Mr. Hyde broke out of all bounds and clapped him to the earth, and next moment, with ape-like fury, he was trampling his victim underfoot and hailing down a storm of blows under which the bones were audibly shattered, and the body jumped upon the roadway. This is an extract from chapter 4, the Carew murder case. Same question as in Cry the Beloved Country. Describe the setting of this extract. Where is it set? It is in the maid's room. And then what happened earlier? After she had witnessed Mr. Hyde beating an old man. So it is the account of the maid retelling what happened earlier when Sir Carew died. And who killed Sir Carew is Mr. Hyde. Clapped him down. So you get your 2 marks if you are able to mention the place and the time of the event. Good going. Let's look at the next extract, again from The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. I bind my honor to you that I am done with him in this world. It is all at an end, and indeed, he does not want my help. You don't know him as I do. He is safe. He is quite safe. Mark my words. He will never more be heard of. The lawyer listened gloomily. He did not like his friend's feverish manner. You seem pretty sure of him, said he, and for your sake, I hope you may be right. If it came to trial, your name might appear. I'm quite sure of him, replied Jekyll. I have grounds for certainty that I cannot share with anyone. But there is one thing on which you may advise me. I have received a letter and I'm at a loss whether I should show it to the police. I should like to leave it in your hands. Atterson, you will judge wisely. I'm sure I have so great a trust in you. Again, describe the setting of this extract. The setting is Dr. Jekyll's laboratory, or Dr. Jekyll's cabinet, or a room above his laboratory. That's for 1 mark. You have choices there. And then when was it? The time? It was in the late one afternoon after Sir Carew's murder. Okay. And for that you get how many marks? You get 2 marks. So you have in your bag 4 marks for the plot or the character matching column. And now you have 2 marks for what? You have 2 marks for the setting. And please, 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 learners, it is very important that you mention the time or the place and the time. Where and when. When, what happened? At what time did that happen? So you ought to mention that, please, for the 2 marks. The next type of questions where you will earn a mark. Remember, we are at this stage working for 10 marks. We have how many marks in the back? We have 6. Let's look at this. We have figures of speech. You know, you are familiar about them, isn't it? A simile, metaphor, personification, alliteration, onomatopoeia, and hyperbole. These are the most common figures of speech that we engage with in English. Paper 2. Let's see. Why figures of speech? The figures of speech are used to do the following. We check comparison, we compare, we contrast, or we check on opposites. It can be similarities or opposite. Again, we look at exaggeration. Exaggerations that create understatements or that recreate sounds. Those are the uses of the figures of speech. Our figures of speech, again, simile, metaphor, and personification. These ones do what? We compare. We use them to compare. And we use a method called the ID to explain in context what the extract is all about when identifying figures of speech. Firstly, the first question, the A part, will be identify the figure of speech used in a particular line. How many marks are you going to earn? You are going to earn 1 mark. Then, the second question will be to explain why that particular figure of speech is used or was used. You describe 2 things that are being compared, and when you do the comparison, whether it be simile or metaphor or personification, what do you need to do? You need to be very specific for you to get another mark. After you have described the two things compared, you furthermore give an explanation why the poet or the author has made that comparison, and then you earn your 1 mark. So how many marks do you get here? You have your 3 marks. Can you see that? Right. Let's continue. An extract from a short story, Village People. Poetry has a home in Africa like a quiet second skin. Like I said, it's from Village People. Poverty has a home in Africa like a quiet second skin. Identify the figure of speech used here. It's going to be what? A simile. For how many marks? 1 mark. The second question. Explain why that particular figure of speech was used in the Village People. The correct answer will be, you describe now the two things that are being compared here. So it's going to be poverty is compared to what? To a person's second skin. Can you see how you describe the two things being compared? That is, 1, poverty, and what again? The second skin. So we have a simile. Why do you have a simile? There is a use of what? Like a. So immediately you see the phrase or the word there, like or as, then you know you are dealing with what? With a simile. Grade 12 learners, when I say describe, when you identify now, after you have identified, you need to check, give us an explanation why that figure of speech was used. Then you describe the comparison between the two things that are being compared. So we need to see that. We don't want you to give us a definition of a simile, but we want you to give us an explanation there or describe the two things that are being compared so that we see that you understand what a simile is. Lastly, what do? The D, we said it stands for description. E, you give an explanation. Poverty is part of Africa. And if it is part of Africa, it is like a second skin, which is part of a person. You cannot do away with your skin, isn't it? It's together with you. It is you. It defines you as a person, that you have a skin. It's an inborn thing in you. You have a second skin that makes you a human being. So poverty in Africa is like a second skin, meaning the people in Africa are so poor that it is normal. It feels like normal, and it shouldn't be like that, isn't it? But here in Village People, remember, the people were suffering. They were going through a drought. They were hungry. They did not have water. And to them, poverty was with them forever. Let's look at the second set of a figure of speech of comparison. I have got a zoo in here, a mad zoo of hungry animals, and the keeper is frightened. Where do we find this? In My Children, My Africa, Act 1, Scene 4. Again, the identification for 1 mark, it is a metaphor, indirect comparison, or an implied comparison. It is not as obvious as you would have seen it in a simile where the two things compared are there, like or as. Mr. M compares the description again. We describe the two things that are being compared. Mr. M compares his heart to what? To a mad zoo of hungry animals. He's comparing his own heart to a mad zoo of hungry animals. The explanation thereof, it shows how he feels in his heart about losing grip on his learners who want to join the boycott. So he is mad inside. He's troubled. He wants to go out. He wants to say to them, come back to school. Children, come back. His heart is sore, is raging. And he can't take it that his children, he has lost grip of his learners who want to join the boycott. So for that, for the metaphor, it's 1 mark. And when you describe the idea now, D, you show us the comparison and you explain what is happening in that metaphor. Again, please do not give us an explanation of what a metaphor is. Let's look at the last one in the comparison category, taken from the short story, The New Tribe. The room was frozen into silence. I'm sure you remember what was happening in The New Tribe. I, for identification, the room. Can you see the room? What happened to the room? It froze to what? To silence. And we say that is a personification. How do we describe it? The room is compared to a person that has fallen silent. Now the room has human qualities. Who froze or who freeze into silence? Human beings, isn't it? We keep quiet. We don't know what to say. We are able to speak, and at some point, we just keep quiet. Can you imagine now that the room now had to keep quiet? The people in the room, the explanation thereof, the E part, we have the second mark there. Now for the third mark, the people in the room are silent to emphasize the shock that the Allingtons feel. They were shocked. And their shock made them to be silent. I'm sure you could feel or you can hear a pin fall. Let's look at the second group of figures of speech, the ones that have to do with exaggeration as well as understatement. Hyperbole, exaggerate. Why do we exaggerate? We exaggerate for emphasis. If you want to emphasize something, we use what? A hyperbole. And when we want to create an understatement, we use euphemism. We use words that are very crude, very respectful. We do not want to hurt. We want to be very polite. And when we are polite, we use euphemism. The person has kicked the bucket. Instead of saying, he is dead. It's sort of very blunt to say he is dead. But when you say, he has kicked the bucket, meaning he has passed on. So that's euphemism. You create that atmosphere of not being blunt. Euphemism is when you refer to something unpleasant in a deliberately pleasant way. You do not want to be crude, but you want to be very polite. You refer to something unpleasant in a deliberately pleasant way. Let's see. Let's look at the examples. In a strange case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, I was coming home from some place at the end of the world. Do you know where the end of the world is? Right. That is a hyperbole. What did we say a hyperbole is? It's exaggeration. Let's see. He is exaggerating to emphasize. Remember, why are we using a hyperbole? We are using hyperbole to emphasize something. In this instance, what is being emphasized? That this person comes from where? He comes home from some place at the end of the world. And do you know where the end of the world is? It can only indicate that that place is very far, far, far away place. Right. Okay. Now we have figurative language that has to do with sounds. And normally with sounds, it has to do with poetry. We have onomatopoeia, we have alliteration, and then we have assonance. Let's look at this sound effects here. We have alliteration, and then we have assonance. What do they indicate? They indicate sounds that are repeated for emphasis. The sounds are repeated for emphasis. And then onomatopoeia. Onomatopoeia indicates that the words to recreate the sounds they describe. So onomatopoeia indicates the words to recreate the sounds they describe. Now let's look at the examples. In mid-term break, what do we have there as alliteration? A 4-foot box, a foot for every year. So we see the repetition there. Let's see what is being repeated here. The F sound, that is for the alliteration. The F, a 4-foot box, a foot for every year. So we immediately know that that child was 4 years old. Assonance, there's the repetition there of the vowels when, with, in, wills. So we have that will, wills, with assonance, and that we find in the poem Spring. Onomatopoeia. While I listen to the buzzing of flies, the buzzing of flies. Immediately when you say the word buzzing, you can even hear the buzzing of the flies or of the bees flying over your head, isn't it? When you splash water, that's onomatopoeia again, isn't it? Can you feel, can you see the sound of water splashing? Right. Normally we use those in poetry. Now let's look at tone. A tone of voice. What is a tone? What is tone? How you say words, isn't it? They say, it is not about what you say, but how you say it. When you are angry, you use words differently. When you are happy, and that's how you say it. It is the attitude or emotion that someone has in their voice when saying certain things. You can read their emotion in their voice. Tone of voice shows how the speaker feels about something. We can immediately say that you are passionate about something, or you are angry, or you are frustrated, or you are sad. So we look at the words, and the words have what? You can attach emotion in the words used. Let's see. Definition of tone. Tone simply refers to how the author feels towards the subject or something. How will you know that? You will know what the author's tone is implying by the words he uses. Remember, when you read, you cannot see the character or the person, but you can easily detect their tone, whether they were jubilant, whether they were sad, or frustrated, or they were just blunt, or they were emphasizing certain things. let's move on. How do we recognize tone in a text? A writer will use subtle ways to express his or her thoughts and the feelings of a speaker or of a narrator or of a character. The writer uses what? Diction. And what is diction? Choice of words that the writer uses in his or in her writing. So diction refers to what? Choice of words. Remember we said you can easily detect the emotion or the attitude of a speaker by reading the words that they have used. Okay. Point of view. You can recognize the tone of a text by doing what? By looking at the point of view. The writer's view and how it affects his or her writing. Is he passionate about the subject or not? Is he frustrated? Syntax. What is syntax? Syntax is the arrangement of words to create sentences. The arrangement of words to create particular sentences, and from there you can feel, you can detect the tone according to what? To the arrangement of words. The writer's formality, how formal or informal the text is. So you can easily check on that. Right. Let's move on. Tone changes. We can recognize the differences when someone's tone changes. If they were initially very excited and now they are disappointed, you will see the way that now the mood has changed or the tone has changed. Note how the attitude of a speaker changes. And how do we recognize the change? We ask, where does it shift? Is it welcoming? Do we see anger? Do we see sadness? And that will check on the attitude. Where do you see a change? Okay. We have various words that indicate to us change, or rather tone, I'm sorry. We are all familiar with happy, people that are happy, people that are sad, people that are mad. But we should also note that when a person is happy, they might as well as be what? They are merry. They could be very ecstatic, cheerful, optimistic, or they are just pleased. Optimistic things are looking out. They have hope. So when we talk of optimistic, you will note that there is hope there. That things are not as bad as they seem. When a person is sad, they could be depressed, or they are disappointed at something, or they are feeling very lonely, miserable, or pessimistic. They are not very hopeful. Be of courage, my son. You remember? Cry the beloved country. What tone is that? Be of courage, my son. What tone would Stephen Khumalo use? He is sad, but he's not very, he's pessimistic. No. He's encouraging that things are difficult at this point, but let's soldier on. When a person is mad about something, what does that mean? They are angry, bitter, frustrated, furious, outraged. Let's look at the next set of tone weights. You could be surprised, curious, exhilarated, shocked, astonished, or inquisitive. You want to know more about it. That's shocking news. I'm really surprised. Curious, I want to know more. The person could be scared, and please don't confuse scared and sad. Scared and sad. If you are afraid, if you are sad, let's go back, let's check. For sad, you are depressed, you are disappointed, you are miserable, you are pessimistic. Things are not looking good. But when you are scared, you are afraid. So don't confuse the two words. You are afraid or horrified. You are even nervous, fearful, uncomfortable. This is the right tone for be of good courage. My son, something is happening. You are afraid and you are uncomfortable that things are going to turn bad for him, but you're saying they shouldn't be scared. But the underlying tone there shows that he is scared, he is afraid that things may go very wrong. When you are scared, you are not disgusted. If you are disgusted, you are embarrassed. You feel inferior. You feel shame, insignificant, as well as inadequate. So, now let's check. We have 4 marks. We have 4 marks for the matching column. Plus, we have 2 marks for the setting. Plus, 1 mark for identification of the figure of speech. Plus, 2 marks for the explanation of the figure of speech. Now, we have plus 1 to identify the tone used. Then plus 1 for the explanation of the figure of speech. Now let's count. We have 4 marks plus 2 is 6, 7, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11. We have 11 marks there. But anyway, We wanted how many marks? 10 marks. So we remove the 1 mark for the identification, and that's also very important. So you have your full marks for your figures, for your quick wins or your easy type of questions. Let's look and let's recap. Remember, this is your last English FAL exam. We are preparing for your last English FAL exam. What you need to do is we need to give it our best, your best, and let all the hard work from the past month pay off. How are you going to achieve that? 1, the few weeks that are remaining, I know you have studied hard, but now you need to do what? To recap. You need to check if you have read or studied your set work thoroughly, the 2 set works. 2, look at the past question papers. It would be a good idea for you to take a question paper and test yourself. We are writing for how many hours? For 2 hours. So what you need to do is take the first extract, or rather the first section, your section A or your section B or your section C or your section D for 35 marks. You sit down and you write, you set your time or your alarm, and you sit down and you write as if you are in the exam. When you are done, I just want you to do the first part, or the first part for the 35 marks, not the whole 70 marks. When you are done, what do you do now? You look at the memo provided and you mark yourself. Let's see. How many marks are you going to earn? Let's see whether you have all your ducks in row. You know your setting, you know your figure of speech, you know the tone. And if you pass that, you continue with the second gender. If not, you go back and read the extract from the book and check all the mistakes that you have done. If you still feel that you haven't really mastered that section, what do? You go back to your teacher and ask the questions that you did not get right, or you sit with your friends and check how they arrived at a particular answer. When you are satisfied that you have mastered the first gender, you continue with the second gender. You test yourself, you mark for yourself, and you see how many marks you will earn. And I hope that will help you a lot. Those are the quick wins. You have to be very intentional about acing paper 2. next time when we meet, we are going to do all the other difficult questions. The theme question, open-ended questions, your multiple choice, your false, true, false question. And learners, if you have questions, you can go on to our WhatsApp interactive number that you can use to ask questions, and that number is 064 748 8913. We would like you to ace your exams. Remember, give it your best and let all the hard work from the past month pay off. Thank you for watching this session. See you next time and goodbye. Thank you.